Fight them? Guys? Guys! You gotta be kidding me!
We are talking PHARM 2, directed by Dante Yor. Obviously, a sequel to the movie PHARM, which came out in 2020. And that was a movie with based on a kind of corn maze attraction, ultimately. And this is the same kind of thing. But this is a film that is very tied to the original film. So if you haven't seen the first one, I feel, you're not, the plot's very simple. But there's certainly character motivations that were, built up in the first movie. But what is the kind of the basic plot here? So it really focuses on about a year or so later than the original movie, and essentially we have this kind of twisted family that own this huge corn maze, actually filmed in the largest corn maze in America, and they are essentially kidnapping and harvesting humans to get a kind of enzyme from people's skin to make a kind of a skin cream, which is, has miracle effects and stuff like this. And in the last film, they had captured this particular girl who has a very kind of high level of these enzymes and stuff like this. So the plot of this film is that kind of girl, after a year of being harvested her skin, is kind of manages to kind of escape and sort of basically frees a kind of a bunch of other kind of prisoners, and they kind of try and get out of this kind of complex that includes this kind of huge corn maze, whilst all the time being pursued by this kind of family of carnival dressed killers. What'll happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. Plot wise, it's a very basic film, and like I've said, it's not exactly hard to follow, but certainly in regards to the kind of the character setup, you are benefited from watching the kind of the first movie, I do feel. Okay, so what works? So I do think, once again, like the first movie, this does benefit from being filmed in this kind of large kind of corn maze, which I do think gives it a kind of nice kind of authentic feel to it. We don't have that many kind of corn maze attractions here in the UK. It is definitely an American thing, but nonetheless, it's a kind of a fun concept. This is this movie, in a way, how the kind of, for example, the second Purge movie shifted more from a horror to an action movie is true of this film. This one is less like a horror film. There's less kind of like innocent kids kind of walking around the corn maze getting hunted by masked killers like that was in the first film. Here, they're just trying to escape, and ultimately it's these kind of group of bad guys trying to kind of capture them. So it has more of an action feel to it rather than a horror feel. There's not really anything scary or creepy. This movie doesn't try and go for a creepy factor, but although there was some elements of that in the first film. I have to say, I do think there are some better kills in this movie. I feel the first film was a little bit lacking on this, and I like to say they got the majority of the cast back here of the surviving members, and it's filled up with some other cast members with new characters, a lot of whom I've noticed have been in various The Asylum pictures and various kind of B-movies. So you have a plethora of somewhat recognisable kind of B-movie character actors here. It is quite fast-paced, and it pretty much kind of goes straight away. Because it's a sequel and we have these pre-existing established characters, it just goes straight into it. One of the things I found interesting about this movie is that it really focuses more on the antagonists than the protagonists. And that's going to come into a critique I have for it as well. But yeah, the actual antagonists gets far more characterization than our kind of group of protagonists, who are really just a kind of basically a faceless group of individuals, with only the kind of the main character being from the first film. But in this movie, she doesn't get any kind of characterization. Again, I'll touch on that in a minute. But nonetheless, it was interesting to see a film where the definite focus is on the antagonists and giving them the characterizations. And one of the things I did enjoy about this movie, which kind of makes it, more grounded in a weird way, is just the kind of this family dynamic that they have. And it's not like it's scary or sinister. They're not trying to be kind of like weird or creepy. in their own way, they're kind of somewhat trying to be pragmatic, albeit they're kind of, you know, killing people and you know, sacrificing human lives. But in their own mind, they're very kind of pragmatic, and it makes for an interesting group of antagonists, really coming at this from a business perspective rather than they want to kill people for being creepy and things like that. And then, for example, there's some kind of little character actions that I found, you know, quite fun. For example, we have this one guy who's like the kind of the Leatherface kind of style character with a kind of like, you know, a skin mask and everything and barbed wire all around it. And he's kind of running around people with a chainsaw, and you get some blood in his eye. And he's just talking to one of the other kind of like the people from this family, his sister, and he's complaining about how he's got blood in his eye and how it kind of stings. And it was just like him not talking any kind of like weird, scary voice. It was just like this big guy with a scary mask going, oh, do you know what, it really stings actually, you know. And it was just quite interesting. Now, it ultimately undercuts any real fear in this movie, ironically called Fear Farm, but I did find it kind of still quite interesting. And I have to say, the movie ends in a way where I kind of liked it, I have to say. It ends in a way you won't necessarily think, although it does somewhat set up for a sequel, which in a way I hope it doesn't, because I think the ending as it stands was quite strong. Okay, so what doesn't work for me? I'm just going to kind of go back and sort of say the other side of the coin here, because like I've said, this movie has some serious lack of characterization from any kind of our protagonists. If you've not seen the first movie, our central protagonist gets no characterization in this movie. So if you're coming into this cold, she doesn't get anything. You know, she's just again like a blank slate, and they don't take the time to really give us any characterization for any of these kind of new characters. So ultimately, they're just a group of faceless kind of cannon fodder waiting to kind of get killed. Now, you know, although I think the movie does a reasonable job kind of giving you characterization with our antagonists, ultimately, you know, we're kind of rooting for the protagonist to survive, at least to a degree, and kind of going on the journey with them. And because we don't really have some of the least amount of characterization I've seen in a kind of a horror movie for quite a long time, I will say. As I've mentioned again, this movie doesn't have that creepy factor that the first movie did a little bit. Even though that first movie, I think, really wasn't all that particularly scary. Just the kind of like the, you know, innocent people who don't really know what's going on, kind of being hunted within this kind of maze. You know, it had some kind of scary elements to a degree. This one just doesn't have that at all. It just doesn't have any kind of like real kind of element of fear or scaring. And to be honest with you, it really should be called Fear Farm, because this doesn't really feel like a horror film at all. And in a way, the people kind of wearing these kind of scary masks, it almost seems like a moot point. Like, why are you doing this? I mean, why have you bothered kind of dressing up when you're just trying to get people who are trying to escape? And again, one of the critiques I had with the first film is, why are they even doing this as a kind of you know, as a kind of a charade of having this kind of cornfield attraction? You know, why are you must think that people coming to this particular cool maze would have mentioned it to other people, and you know, logistically and logically, it doesn't really make a lot of sense about how this kind of setup is. I think it's on par with the first film, but I think it has different highs and kind of like different kind of troughs, if that makes sense. It's certainly a comparable film. If you liked the original movie, I feel it's a reasonable continuation from that. But if you're coming into this cold, I honestly don't think it offers much for any kind of new viewers here. I will say that, and it's certainly less of a horror film, more of an action film. Again, I'm going to give this one the same as I gave the first one, a 4 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.